Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Uprooted. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Amatoke Adewale, and I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I bring all the things faith and mental health on this platform. If you're joining for the first time, give yourselves a hand clap because that means you've tuned in to a very special episode, and this was destined for you to listen to. So I'm glad you're here. And today we have a very special guest, someone who I've known for a while and I really look up to, almost like a mentor to me in a way. Um, and I'm just going to pass it over to him. We're going to jump right in today because we have a lot to talk about. And I'm going to let him introduce himself. Over to you, Warnell.
Everyone, my name is Warnell Brooks. I am a marriage and family therapist. I currently work at a community care facility in Brentwood, California, that specializes in Christian counseling. I'm also a pastor at one of the local churches here in the Bay Area in Concord, California. I help out in pastoral care, and I also lead worship and all that good stuff at the church. So I'm just excited to be here. And as Toke said, I've known her for a while. We work together in the mental health field, learning and growing and just doing all kinds of stuff that a lot of people would not even imagine in the world of mental health. But it's been good, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here today.
Yay. Thank you, Warnell. You wear many hats. When you were doing your introduction, I was like, oh. You wear a lot of hats. Can you share like a fun fact about you? This is a question I ask everyone. Do you have any like fun facts about you or identities that are important to you? You kind of shared some already, but any fun facts?
Honestly, one thing that people probably would not know about me, because I feel like people always tell me I have like a mean resting face. So they're always thinking that you do. Well, I can't help it. It's DNA. But people don't know that I'm a big ice cream lover.
Wait, I think I knew that.
Did you know that? Because I can tear some ice cream up. Like it's bad though, and don't throw some soft chocolate chip cookies in the mix, because I will mix it all up together in a big fat bowl and then get into a diabetic coma and fall asleep, and that is really bad. But that's what I do. So that's a fun fact.
Wait, what's your favorite flavor? What's like your go-to flavor?
My go-to is just straight out chocolate, just plain chocolate. But it's all the additions. You've got to put stuff in it. Yeah.
Chocolate is your favorite?
Chocolate ice cream.
All-time favorite. Chocolate.
All time. Just chocolate.
All right. I mean, I'm kind of judging you this much.
I feel it. I feel the judgment on the other side, chocolate, but it's all good.
Cream. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And you also shared some identities. I feel like you talked about being a pastor, a therapist, a mental health advocate, honestly.
Yeah.
Do you have like any other identities that you feel like are like very near and dear to you and that are important to you?
Well, I'm a husband and a father. My wife and I actually just celebrated 10 years of marriage last week.
Hey, so that's a huge milestone.
Yeah, it is, because some folks can't make it 10 minutes, but 10 years, it's been a long time. Sometimes it feels like it's been 10 years, and then sometimes it just feels like we just got together yesterday. It's just, it's really interesting. But I am a husband and I'm a father. I have a 5-year-old daughter who just started kindergarten. And all the emotional stuff that goes along with that, I was feeling all week long. It's different than preschool, because, preschool is like, you can go check on them and hear from the teachers and get pictures and stuff and see how the day is going. Kindergarten, they just in school. It's just there. So, throughout the day, I'm like, how's she doing? Is she okay? She's at that age where she's launched out. So yeah, I'm a husband and a father. And I absolutely love being a dad. I love being a husband too. My wife and I get along well. We're not perfect.
Nobody is.
we definitely have our knockdown drag outs. But at the end of the day, it's all love. So it's good. But yeah.
Those are I feel like as you're describing your identities, it's making me think about how over time, like the identities that we have or that are like it changes, it
Yeah.
transforms, it looks different. Even like I can imagine when you were first a dad, um, and then to now, right? Like 5 years later, and then the same thing with like being a husband.
Oh yeah.
And just like the different like hats and identities that we carry, like they transform over
Oh,
time, you
absolutely.
know?
Well, and the
Yeah.
thing is with me, I didn't really see a lot of models in front of
Mm,
me, right? In
mm-hmm,
terms of what a husband was supposed to be like, or what a husband was supposed to do, or how a husband was supposed to treat his wife.
mm-hmm,
And so a lot of it, honestly, I just gleaned from people that I did consider
mm-hmm,
mentors in some way.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
They never sat me down and said, "Hey, Warnell, this is what you're supposed to do." But just
mm-hmm,
watching them, I would kind of look at them and say, "Yeah, okay, I could do that. I could do that." But a lot of it was sort of trailblazing and me sort of figuring out, what it was going to look like for me, but also for what it was going to look like for my legacy, for any children that I have.
mm-hmm,
And so, in terms of shaping an identity, I would say that God has really been instrumental in helping me do that through
mm-hmm,
Him, and
mm-hmm,
not a lot through like direct examples that I've had, because I didn't have any at all.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's usually like what happens. Like I was talking to someone else and they were kind of sharing, and it's funny because they're also a man. And I feel like it's this sometimes common theme, like,
Yeah.
and that person's also a father. And just having actually two people that I've talked to, and how like they also didn't have that model, but they just kind of took bits and pieces, that worked for them and examples that they were able to see from somewhere,
Yeah.
to kind of shape the type of family that they wanted to build, or
Yeah.
the type of man that they wanted to be, right? And I think for a lot of people, that's kind of how we have to navigate life, like
That's right.
especially if didn't have that example, like you said,
Yeah.
maybe due to whatever circumstance you happen to be in. Or I like to say, you can't really choose a family that you're born into, but
Sure can.
you can determine the family that comes out of you, right? You can have
That's
some
right.
type of, control and power over that,
Mm,
determining like what cycles and patterns and things you want to change. And yeah.
that's right. I'm gonna have to write that down. I'm gonna steal that from you, Toke.
Okay.
Tell my clients that. Shoot.
Yeah, because it's true. Like a lot of
Yeah.
us, have different, especially like coming from the Black community,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we just continue to have generations of trauma and cycles. And now, thankfully, there's a lot of insight. People are like, building their knowledge and learning about things and trying to
Yeah.
be, more open and just be aware, and I
Mm,
think that's making a difference. But I mean, we still have a long way to go, but I think that's making
absolutely.
a huge difference in the
Yeah.
type of legacy, like you said, that we're trying to build. So
Well, what you mentioned, the Black community, and
mm-hmm,
working as a therapist, in one capacity of my life.
mm-hmm,
One of the things that I realized is a common theme with those who identify as Black or African American is
mm-hmm.
that we do not realize that we have options.
Come on.
We don't realize that we have
Yeah.
options.
Mm-hmm,
And I think that there is a narrative
mm-hmm,
that we get locked into. And I'm not saying that the narrative is like universal with everybody, but each
mm-hmm.
person, based off of the family that they grew up in, has a certain narrative that they feel like they're locked into, and they have to
Yeah.
stay committed to that. And
Mm-hmm,
so, when they come into counseling with me, whether through a marriage or individual,
mm-hmm.
and I am sort of helping them explore, like, here, what are your options? Like, what else can we do? It's almost like it's a foreign language,
Yeah.
right? Because of the
Yeah.
fact that we're just used to feeling as though it's just this box, this
Yeah.
corner, this
Yeah.
thing, and that's it.
Mm-hmm,
And so it's been, honestly, it's been really groundbreaking in the sense of
mm-hmm.
helping people see that there's so much more of the world that we can
Yeah.
explore and that we can learn to help us become better people, as opposed to just saying, well, this is how I grew up, or this is how my mama did it, or this is how my daddy
Mm-hmm.
did it, you know, or this is
Mm-hmm.
the family we from, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to say like, no, you can actually change that if you want to. You don't have
Yeah.
to stay there, whether it's trauma, whether it's anxiety, depression, like whatever it is, you don't have to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things that I've noticed, you know, so far in working with our community.
Yeah, we have options. You have
We have
options.
options.
Like, and it, like you said, it starts with that awareness of somebody pointing it out. And I think that's why mental health and therapy is so vital for
Yeah.
everyone, but I think more specifically for Black people, like
Mm.
to go to therapy, to be on top of our mental health,
Yeah.
because you can't have what you can't see,
Mm.
right? So
Right.
somebody has to like point it out to you. Like
Mm-hmm.
you point it out to clients, right? But when we have like that kind of tunnel vision, you're not gonna know that there are options.
Mm-hmm.
You're not
Mm-hmm.
gonna know that there's anything else out
Right.
there. Yeah. So you said you're okay. So you say you're a pastor and a therapist,
Yeah.
and he's a legit. It's not like, you know, I know there's some ministers out there that call themselves counselors, and there's nothing
Right.
wrong with that.
Sure.
But Warnell is a legit, like, educated, master's, you know, licensed, like, therapist.
Praise the
Okay.
Lord. Yes. Yes.
So he went to school.
I went to school, got that paper.
Exactly. How did that happen? How are you a pastor and a therapist? Because you don't really see that or hear that often. What was your journey? How did you get here?
Well, I have to say, to be honest and very transparent, that they both were a calling
Mm.
from God that I did not want to accept and that I ran away from for a very, very long time. And so, you know, when I was little, everybody used to say, oh, that boy gonna be a pastor, that boy gonna preach. I'm like, no, I ain't. That is not me. Um,
Wow.
and you know, it was just one day, I feel like it was maybe 2004-ish sometime. I was just reading in a devotion. And you know how when you just read and something just kind of hits you and you can't explain it, but you know, you
Yes.
feel it and it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I was
Yeah.
reading, honestly, in this devotion about the story of David and how David
Mm-hmm.
was selected, you know, by God through
Mm-hmm.
the priest Samuel to be the king of Israel.
Mm.
And when I was reading that story, something just came over me. And then I contacted the pastor who was my pastor at the time and
Mm-hmm.
told him, you know, I feel like I've been called to
Mm.
preach. And, you know, so he kind of took me on this little journey. Well, how you know? And how do you know you know? And then how do
Okay.
you know, right?
Gotta verify. Yeah.
And I thought that was good because,
Yeah.
you know, each time that he was challenging me to confirm what I know that God had spoken to me in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
I felt more and more confident. I felt more and more
Mm.
connected to what I knew because of
Mm.
what the Holy Spirit was doing in me. So,
Yeah.
but I ran from it because of what I had seen, you know, what I
Mm.
had seen of pastors was not always very good, if I can be honest.
Yeah.
You know, what
Yeah.
I had seen of pastors was, you know, people who were not doing right. They were one way in the church, in the pulpit, and then they were another way outside of the church. And then sometimes they were the same way, but it was not reflecting who God really is, you know, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't reflecting the calling that God had placed on their life, you know, and no
Yeah.
judgment towards anybody. I'm just speaking, you know, from what I saw.
Yeah. From your
And
experience. Yeah.
so that honestly turned me off from ever wanting to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so it took me a while to be able to accept it. But like I said, when that feeling came over me, it was like, no, this
Mm.
is real. This is something that I have to do. Now,
Mm.
when it comes to being a therapist, I got to tell you that I feel like in some ways I've always been a therapist.
Yeah, why does everyone say that? Well, not everyone, but most
But
most
it's
of us
if
in this
right.
field, we're like, yeah, it's just kind of always been
Because you
there, or
just always
in my
end up being the
family,
one. Yeah.
or in my friends.
You always end up being the one. I can remember like junior high, high school, you know, my friend,
Yeah.
Warnell, this is what I'm going through. You know, I know if I talk to you, and I'm like, okay, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so being able to identify that that had been a part of my life for a while, and like you were saying, people were, you know, from my family, friends, everybody were just, you know, coming to me. And what I realized as I started to learn more about God and spiritual gifts was that I had been given a spiritual gift of wisdom. And that only can come from God.
Yes.
And so it wasn't necessarily me, but it was God working through me. But I again ran away from it because I'm like, that's a lot of responsibility,
I don't want it.
you know. And then they talk about you got to go to grad school. Let me tell you,
Man.
when I finished undergrad, I was like, I'm never going back to school. I'm never going back to school.
Yeah.
And I remember I was sitting at the place where you and I used to work, but when it was a residential program at the time. And I was sitting in front of this kid who had just had this big blowout. And this is when I was first starting out as a counselor.
Oh,
and
man.
He's like telling his whole life story, you know, you don't know what this person did to me, that person. I'm just sitting there, you know, just listening, just super calm and chill. And then there was a coworker who was a therapist at the time. He writes on a Post-it, you're going to be a great therapist one day, and slips it to me while I'm listening to this kid's story.
Wow.
I looked at that paper. I was like, not me. You got the wrong counselor. And that person, you know, now is deceased. But I feel like that was a seed that was planted. That was like, no, Warnell, what you're doing, you have to take to another level. So that was also in about 2004, right?
Wow.
Interestingly.
Wow.
And so years and years pass.
You really ran away from it.
I did. I really did.
2004.
2004. I applied to grad school in 2014. So a whole 10 years had passed before I had applied.
Wow.
And let me tell you how good God is. I'd applied and, you know, I was like, writing the, you know, you got to write your personal statement and all this stuff. And it just was like, it was nerve wracking. Yeah. But I was able to get it done. I got accepted, went through my first quarter in 2014. Now, you know how expensive grad school is.
Yes.
I looked at that bill and I said, Lord, you're just going to have to make a way because I don't know how I'm going to do this for the next 2 years. I just don't know how I'm going to do this. Yeah. And the place where I was working at the time, the CEO, he was like, Warnell, you going back to grad school? I said, yeah. He said, well, I've been wanting you to do that for a while, so I'd like to pay for it.
Come on.
Look at God.
Wow.
So I paid for 1 quarter.
Wow.
And the rest was completely covered.
Wow.
Every book, every fee.
Wow.
God will open up doors.
Yeah.
When it's your calling, when it's your thing to do, right? When it's your purpose, he will make a way, right? And so again, that was my confirmation, Lord, this is what I'm supposed to do. So that's how I got here, you know, just it being a counselor and a therapist, just accepting that this is what God wanted for me. Yeah. And being able to walk in that and to be confident in that, never arrogant, but just confident in saying like, you know, this is what God has called me to do. So both of them were a calling and that's how I got here. Wow.
And I feel like your story that you just shared kind of speaks to the fact of how like some of us, we run from that, like you said, inner calling, whatever you want to call it out there. We here, we believe in God, but I know different people believe in different things, but just that inner confirmation, and you know that it's time to take that step to do that thing. Yeah. But we run away from it, you know, because it's whether it's fear, whether it's doubt, whether it's I don't know how it's going to happen, whether it's outside of my comfort zone. Right. This is not how is it going to happen? Right. And then I feel like when we end up doing it, the ease sometimes it's things just kind of fall into place. Yes. Sometimes, you know, there might be challenges and it might not be a smooth road. But the path is clear. Right. And I think sometimes we spend so much time like doubting, fearing, how's it going to happen? Rather than just kind of like going with that, answering that call and going with what we know is what we're supposed to do.
That's it.
And when I say we, I'm speaking to myself too.
Right. Because we knew what you was supposed to be doing.
You know how long it took me to start this podcast, y'all? A very long time. So, you know, and now it's just like, you know, trying to just keep going. But beginning, it was fear, it was doubt, it was how are people going to take this, or what do I have to say? Who wants to listen to what I have to say? Right. But I think that that's so powerful, and the testimony that can come in our purpose when we're walking in our purpose, right? The testimonies that can come into that. Wow. Yeah. So a pastor and a therapist. Now, I do have to ask though.
Yeah.
Do you ever like face, because mental health and faith, I feel like has been like this.
Yeah, kind of clashing.
Yeah. And it still kind of is, right? And when really it should be like this, right? And you're kind of you're wearing like the two hats, right? You have the pastoral hat, you have, I'm a therapist, clinician. So have you seen what has been your experience? Let me just say it like that. What has been your experience knowing that there is this thing where we don't talk about mental health, we don't talk about mental wellness in the church amongst us as Christians? It's kind of like almost like a taboo. You walk around it, pretend it's not there. And then when it comes to even in the field of mental health, there's not a lot of, I feel like, emphasis on people's like spiritual practices, because we know the mental health field was created by white men, right? And with white people in focus, right? And it wasn't really created for, I guess, other ways of life and other ways of being. I hope I'm explaining that well, but like, what have you, like, what has been your experience knowing that you wear the two hats, and the history has been that it's not very integrated?
Yeah. I would say, starting off, it's okay that I personally, although they are two different hats, I don't look at them as two different hats. I look at it all as ministry. I really do. I look at it all as like, this is what God has gifted me in. Yeah. And so I use it in specific areas for specific situations, if that makes sense. Yeah. So, you know, when I'm working at the counseling center that I work at, you know, I do lean a little bit more on the clinical side because of what people are paying for, right? And I'm educated in that way. Yeah. However, when I'm on the pastoral side, it doesn't mean that I don't bring any of my clinical stuff in the room when I'm talking to people and meeting with them for pastoral care, because God has gifted me with that knowledge for a reason. Yeah. And so I definitely try to integrate them by my own presentation, not look at them separate. So that's the first thing. But then the other piece to what you're bringing up in regards to, you know, the taboo and how it's been like that with faith and mental health, is that I feel like I have learned over the last 3 years how to be more integrative in bringing out very clear examples in the Bible of where mental health, where mental health exists. Yeah. So that people don't question it, because that's where the question is. It's like, well, it's not biblical. Well, let's check that out. Let's look at that. Let's see. No, let's look at your boy Elijah, right?
Come on. Yeah.
You know, was having a hard time because they was like rejecting him. He was like, I don't need to be here. I'm gonna take my own life. Just take my own life. Yeah. That would be suicidal. That is mental health. Yes. Right?
Or
and even Jesus, you know, when he was about to be crucified and he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? The Bible clearly tells us that he was filled with anxiety. The Bible tells us that he was like, Lord, I don't want to do this. Yeah. Right? Feeling so low to the point to where the sweat was like blood. Like, come on.
Yeah.
There were some very physical symptoms
Mm-hmm.
of mental health that he was experiencing in those moments.
Yeah.
That we don't want to take a look at and connect it to that. Well, he was a little anxious.
Yes, he was very
Right?
anxious.
He was a little anxious. He
Yeah.
was depressed. He
Yeah.
didn't want to do that. He
Yeah.
was trying to stay connected, and he did ultimately complete the will of his Father.
Yes.
But all that was there. You just got to look at it and read it.
Yeah.
But what I love is in the book of Matthew, where Jesus himself says, "Come unto me, all you who are heavy laden, weary,
yes,
burdened down."
Yeah. What is that? Depression.
Come on now.
Or when the Bible talks about the spirit of heaviness.
Yes.
And I forgot what book it is, but that spirit of heaviness, I think it's Isaiah. That spirit of heaviness is depression.
It's depression. It's depression.
Or you look at David in the book of Psalms. He went through it.
He went through it. Some of it he brought on himself.
David went through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we like you said, we try to not want to see what's right in front of us. I think we move away from what we haven't been open to, or what doesn't feel familiar, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, we don't know there's other ways to see things, like you were talking about earlier. Like there's other ways, and that's what I love about the Bible. Like
it's all in there.
There's so much depth. There's so much revelation.
It's all in there.
Yeah,
it's all in there. And I guess that the only other piece to that is helping people understand like what God really wants us to do when it comes to addressing the challenges in life that we face. For whatever reason, and I'm not sure what this reason is, because I only been around this earth for a little while, but it would appear as if we as Christians feel like we have to come before God very packaged, very proper, very perfect, almost in it, right?
Yeah.
When he clearly tells us in the word, no, I don't want you to come to me perfect. I want you to come as you are. I want to meet you right where you're at. The Bible tells us in Romans 5:8, while you were yet in your sin, Christ died. He didn't wait for you to get better. So, and why I bring that into the context of this conversation about faith and mental health is because that is one of the things that keeps people in the church from seeking support with their mental health.
Exactly.
Is because of the fact that they feel like, well, I don't want to go to counseling. Like I need to get better before I can go to counseling, or I need to get better before I go to the church or talk to a pastor about this. But why? But why?
Yeah.
Like that's not what God says. That's not how God wants us to be. And so even in our prayer time, even when we're being a counselor, people come to me all the time and they'll say, well, I'm so sorry I'm burdening you with all my problems. I'm so sorry I'm saying all this stuff to you. And I'm like, you're not burdening me. And you're definitely not burdening God, because that's what he wants you to do. He wants us to trust him. He wants us to bring these things to him. Our depression, he wants us to bring it to him. Our anxiety, our frustrations, our day-to-day stuff that we just go through that brings about stresses. He wants us to bring all that to him. And being able to get the counsel of many, which is what it tells us in the book of Proverbs, is helpful in being able to lay that before God, because he uses people like yourself, Toke, like me, like so many other mental health professionals to be that voice, to be that sounding board. He equips us to be able to help others to draw closer to him. So I just try to bring it all together and not look at it separately.
And that's really the key, because it's not separate.
It's not separate.
Right? It's not separate, especially in the purposeful way that God has designed us. Right. And like you said, like mental health is all in the Bible. And that's because God knew that in the way that he created us, we're going to face things in life. Right. I mean, the Bible says that when the fire comes, right, when you go through the fire, when you go through the waters, right, it doesn't say if.
Right.
It suggests like, well, it might happen, it might not happen. Like God knew that. And like you said, like he has given us wisdom. And I feel like, mental health is a resource, is a tool that God has given us to use. And I think the whole idea of like coming to God, perfect and put together. And I think sometimes it's because of the way that we see God, right?
Yeah.
And he's a perfect God, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's not expecting that from us, right? And I think that's where, and I think also sometimes like the church environment, when people only present themselves a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
then it kind of further perpetuates this idea that this is how you have to be, right? And it's kind of like this unspoken rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then people think they have to go to God that way, and like, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, like, and I always I made a post some weeks back, but I always try to like talk about how when we're going through something, when we're going through any mental health challenge, when we're going through just life stresses, God doesn't change. We change.
Come on now.
We change.
Yeah.
We choose like, oh, I'm just gonna deal with it on my own. I'm just gonna, try to figure it out. Or we say, where's God?
Mm-hmm.
That's one that we hear all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
God feels like God has left me. It feels like God has abandoned me. It feels like God is nowhere to be found. Can't he see all the things that I'm going through, that I'm facing, that I'm struggling with? He's there. You changed.
Yep.
You gotta, he's still there. Like,
that's right.
You have to position yourself to go to him, right? And allow him to comfort you. Allow him to be there for you. I'm not trying to preach, but
no, look, you preaching. I'm getting the word this morning. Where's my organ? Yes.
But it's so
true.
So true. Like faith and mental health, like even when I was in grad school, like I feel like a lot of the things that I always tell this to people, a lot of things that we were learning, I'm like, you can find this in the Bible. Like, if you really, like when we talked about like, especially with the family systems and things like that we talked about, intergenerational transmission, family curse,
all of it,
generational curse, generational blessing.
Just go to the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Just start there. Just with them three.
This sounds like so that's how you know, like, God really created everything. God is so instrumental. Like, I just find it really beautiful. And it's like he knew the things that we will need and the resources that we need to tap into. And there's nothing wrong with going to counseling as a Christian. There's nothing wrong with being in therapy as a Christian. It doesn't make you less of a Christian. It doesn't make you less loved. It doesn't make you less valuable. It doesn't make you weak, because it's a resource.
I've heard people say Christians don't get depressed because we got Jesus.
Ooh, okay.
Christians don't need that because we got the Holy Spirit. We got prayer.
We do.
It's like, you do have those things, but see, saying that you don't need the resources that God has placed here is almost as if you are saying, God, you're only going to heal me in this way.
Yes, I'm gonna choose how you're gonna.
I'm gonna choose how you're gonna do it,
as
opposed to being open again to options and possibilities of how God will choose to do it for you. Right?
Yeah.
There are some individuals that through prayer and those spiritual elements do receive a healing from those things. Praise God. And then there are some that also receive it through counseling, and praise God. Right? Point being, we don't want to eliminate one for the sake of the other when God created it all.
Yes, exactly.
When God created it all.
Yeah. And I feel like healing in itself, it's a repeated event.
Come on.
Like people are like, oh, I'm healed. You're healed, but you have to keep practicing and doing the things. It's kind of like, oh, I just had surgery on whatever part of my body. So everything's healed now. I'm just going to go back to doing the same thing. Maybe you had some type of like heart condition or whatever. No, you have to keep doing the things to maintain what you just had surgery on.
That's right.
Even when we do get out healing, it doesn't mean, okay, I'm healed now. And there's so many practical things that I feel like we ask for healing for, that if we just get practical and be disciplined, you don't need healing for that, right? You don't need like tap into resources. I mean,
You look, you right on. I'm gonna tell you, one of the first questions that I ask people when in counseling, say we're first getting started and they're telling me all the stuff that's going on, I'll say, how you sleeping? Talk to me about how you sleep. How much sleep did you get last night? Oh, I got about like 3-4 hours. Okay. And then what you eat today? How's your appetite? You eating good meals? Are you eating good healthy meals? Are you eating vegetables and fruits? Like you said, the basic things.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a couple of times where I just told my client, I said, so here's what I'd like for you to do. I want you to go to sleep. I want you to go to sleep at 9 o'clock and wake up at like 6 or 7 o'clock the next morning. And then let's talk and let's see if that has a change in your mood, just you being able to go to sleep, because you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Right. It's basic stuff sometimes that, again, we're overlooking.
Or being too spiritual about so many things.
Being too spiritual.
I need to pray about this. No, you just need to find ways to talk to your kids better.
Come on.
You need to tap into resources of
Don't yell. Don't yell at them. How about that? Let's start there. Don't yell.
There's so many things that we like over spiritualize.
Yes.
We over spiritualize it. No, you just need to be more disciplined. Then you can get a promotion at work. You need to come on time. Right.
I'm a fast and pray for 30 days and 30 nights.
You're praying for God to increase you. Like, we talk about this a lot in my church. Like, we pray for God to like do these things for us, breakthroughs, increase me in my finances, show me my purpose.
Yeah.
Give me all these things. But we do the opposite of what we're asking God to do. So you're expecting something, but you're working against yourself.
That's right.
To receive that thing. Like, some things are just practical, y'all. That's really all I'm trying to say. Like, you have to be prepared. Yeah, you have to be prepared. Like, some things don't always need, I hate to say it, but some things always don't need prayer. Like, we over spiritualize, like, just there are tools and resources that God has given us, especially with the way the world is going.
Yeah.
There's so many possibilities, like Warnell said. And sometimes we just need to tap into resources and open our awareness and don't over spiritualize everything. And I think that's also an important integration of faith and mental health, right? There's mental health resources, there's mental health access. More and more people are talking about mental health now, which is awesome, and we have to tap into those resources because God has given it to us.
Yes, he has.
To utilize, to be the best us, to be the best versions of ourselves.
All things. God created all things, even therapy.
Even therapy. God created therapy. Pretty much what you're saying is me and Warnell are just, if you're saying therapy is not from God, we're just kind of wasting our time. We're not walking it out purpose.
Right.
We're not doing what God has called us to do because God didn't create therapy. So we must just be wasting our, no, God created therapy.
Yes, he did.
Just like God created doctors, medicine, science.
That's right.
The same thing.
But I'll tell you, okay, one of the things that I often look for is evidence, and faith is the evidence, the substance of things, hope for the evidence of things that we don't see, right?
Yeah.
And so, you can't see therapy. You can't see, right, the things that happen in those moments, those epiphanies, those light bulbs that come on, right, where people, you can't see them, but you know that it happens.
Yeah.
You know that it's there.
Yeah.
And I can say this hands down, that from the place where you and I used to work, and we would see all those kids come in one way and leave out another way. When people come into my office, they come in one way and they leave out another way. They leave with hope. They leave with strength. They leave with courage, right? You can't see any of those things, but you know that they're there.
Yeah.
And so that's the evidence that we have in knowing that this is a part of what God is doing and what he wants to continue to do, and that he created it, because you literally see people transform from one way of being to another way of being. I've seen it too many times.
A lot of times. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the power of God working through us.
That's
right. as the vessel that he's using. Oof, this is good. So for you, Warnell, like, what has been your own like mental wellness journey?
That's a really good question. I would say, kind of starting off, I'm gonna start like this because I'm gonna be real. I didn't always know that I needed a mental awareness journey. I didn't know that I needed some assistance up here and in here. And again, coming from the culture, that I grew up in, it was like, the Lord will take care of it. He got you. The Lord got you. And he did. And he has kept me.
Yeah.
And there were some other things that needed to be done. And so I would say just briefly that the start of it happened when I started working at the place where you and I worked at, when I first started there as a counselor. And when I saw all of those kids that we were serving going through their stuff, and then I would read their histories, I was like, I went through that. Wait a minute, I went through that too.
Sounds like me.
I was like, I went through that too. And then it's like, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Because you see where these kids are, and then you see where I was, and I was like, I could have been this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so that sort of was my opening in saying, yo, if they're getting this support on their mental awareness journey, their mental health journey, I probably should do the same thing. And so I actually started to invest in helping them. And as I was helping them vicariously, it was helping myself.
Yeah.
And then from there, I actually got into my own therapy. And started, uncovering some stuff and exploring some stuff. And I feel like it has made me stronger. It's made me a stronger husband. It's made me a better father. It's honestly made me a better pastor because of my own journey and being able to tap into the things that I had been through and talk to somebody about it in its entirety with no holds barred. I'm able to connect with people better. I'm able to connect with people on a more personable level because I can look at them and I can say, yep, I see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
And it's only because of my own experiences, but I wouldn't be able to do that if I had not gone through my own stuff. So I went through my own counseling, my own therapy, still in my own therapy and counseling. And I'm glad to say that because everybody needs someone. Every pastor needs a pastor. Every therapist needs a therapist. Every dad needs a dad. Every husband needs a husband. Like every person needs that person that they can look to. God has placed these individuals here on earth to be representatives of who he is so that we can get what we need from him on earth as it is in heaven. So that's been my journey, just starting off there, but then being very consistent with saying, I know that this is what I need and going after it.
Wow. Everybody needs someone. The way you just put that was just so good. And it's so true. It's so true. So true. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Like, I'm feeling like so good about it because like you said, as a pastor saying that you've been through therapy and you're going through therapy, like, being able to like normalize that and debunk all of the myths and all of just the nonsense that's connected, to mental health seen as like weakness and just all of these things. I'm so glad that we're talking about this.
Yeah.
Like this is so good. And as we wrap up, this has been such a good conversation, y'all.
Yeah.
So please make sure as you're watching this video, like if you have further questions, if you want to see a part 2,
call me, girl, call me. Yeah.
Go ahead and just let us know because there's so much to unpack, right? And I feel like we've unpacked so much, but there's just, the deeper you go, the deeper there is to go, right? So, put in the comments if you have like further questions, if you want to hear more about this. I specifically chose to delve more into faith, specifically with Warnell, just because of the various roles and hats that he wears. So, with other conversations, we kind of go a different route. And even though this platform is faith and mental health, we talk about it here and there, but I really purposely wanted to like delve deeper with you. And I think we did that. Yeah. And then some. So thank you so much, Warnell. Yeah. And there's one last question that I do ask everyone at the end.
Sure.
Is what is one word that you will use to describe your personal testimony and journey?
Only one word, huh?
Yeah, one word, and why you chose that word.
I think what comes to mind, honestly, is preserved. That's the word that comes to me when I think about my personal journey, my testimony. I'm preserved. You know, when we preserve things, we kind of seal it up, kind of put it in a protective casing, to be used for later. Not that it won't go through some bumps and bruises and while you're doing what you're doing, but it's being preserved, for later. And I feel like that word speaks to what God has done for me. He has preserved me. Wow. I've been through so many things. A lot of stuff people would look at me and they're like, you went through that? You went through that? I do not look like what I have been through.
Yeah.
But God has preserved me. And it's for this moment, right? For this time, right? When I was going through all the stuff that I was going through, that was the season that I was in then. But there was like a shield, there was like a covering over me, right? That I didn't get the worst of it, that I didn't get the worst case scenario, if you will.
Yeah.
Because there was a preservation that took place. And so for me, to be here talking to you about what I'm talking to you about, to be able to serve in ministry the way that I am, I would not be able to do any of those things had I not been preserved, had I not been kept, right? Had I not been shielded from the worst case scenario, but given this opportunity to be able to be a light, to those who are in darkness in whatever way that looks. So that's the word.
Preserved. Have you ever been asked that type of question before?
I never have.
Because I love the way you answered it, and I could tell that it just kind of came like in the moment. I could tell. That's why I asked if you ever like thought about that or been asked that question before.
Yeah, kind of got me all kind of a little choked right there. Okay. Because the thoughts start coming, the memories start coming, and it's like,
preserved. That's a good one. Preserved. Wow. Thank you so much, Warnell, for joining me on here, for having this conversation. Thank you for blessing our community. Uprooted. Let's, make sure we show him some love. And we're just going to wrap this up now. Thank you all so much for joining today. Make sure you, like I said, leave your comments, and also let us know any questions you have. And we'll be back again with another episode. And until we meet again, remember what I always say, continue to be well, do well, and live well. Hey community, thank you so much for tuning into the episode today. I know that you got something out of it, so don't forget to leave all your comments, questions, and reflections from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe as we continue to build this community together. And also turn on your notifications so that you know when every episode drops. Thank you all so much again, and until we meet again, continue to be well, do well, and live well.